Few films in recent memory have generated as much anticipation or endured as much turmoil as the Michael Jackson biopic simply titled Michael. From a years-long casting search to legal landmines, natural disasters, and a runtime crisis, the road to the screen was anything but smooth. Here's a look at the wild journey behind the making of this generation-defining film. Long before a single frame was shot, the filmmakers faced an almost impossible challenge: finding someone who could believably step into the shoes of the most famous entertainer who ever lived. The search stretched across more than 2 years and considered upward of 2,000 candidates from around the globe. Director Antoine Fuqua and producer Graham King weren't simply looking for a look-alike. They needed someone who could match Michael Jackson's unique voice, his commanding stage presence, and the emotional depth that made him who he was. Eventually, the search circled back to the Jackson family itself, landing on Jaffer Jackson, Michael's nephew and the son of Jermaine Jackson. It would be his first ever feature film role, and the pressure was enormous. If audiences didn't buy a performance, the entire production risked collapsing, taking a massive financial investment down with it. One lighter moment from filming has been circulated widely: a photo of Jaffer, in character as young Michael, laughing alongside the actors playing his on-screen parents, while chimpanzees standing in for Bubbles sat between them. According to accounts from the set, the chimp mimicked one of Jaffer's expressions mid-rehearsal, sending the entire crew into fits of laughter and briefly halting filming altogether. Casting Jaffer wasn't just a creative decision. It needed the emotional approval of the Jackson family, starting with matriarch Katherine Jackson. Her endorsement was seen as essential to the project's credibility. She publicly voiced her support, saying her grandson truly captured her son's spirit, his movement, and his devotion performance. For a family that had spent decades protecting Michael's image, this public show of support marked a real turning point. It gave the production the cultural legitimacy it needed and gave Jaffer the confidence to take on such a demanding role, while also easing some of the tension between studio executives, estate lawyers, and family members who were watching the project closely to make sure Michael's legacy was handled with care. To prepare, Jaffer didn't just study old footage. He moved into the Jackson family's former estate, Havenhurst, in Encino, California, living there for months. Surrounded by childhood mementos and quiet, familiar spaces, the line between acting preparation and lived experience began to blur. For the Jackson family, watching a relative walk those same halls while adopting Michael's voice and mannerisms stirred up powerful memories, both joyful and painful. That immersive process gave his eventual performance a depth that's rare in music biopics, and it quickly became one of the most talked-about elements of the production. Inside his workspace at the estate, Jaffer reportedly built an elaborate research wall covered in letters, journals, handwritten lyrics, and timelines connecting personal and career milestones. Rather than aiming for a surface-level impression, he dug into the psychology behind albums like Thriller and Bad, tried to understand what was driving Michael during those creative peaks. That level of dedication reportedly impressed both the crew and the estate representatives overseeing the project. Recreating Michael Jackson's choreography took a serious physical toll. Jaffer had no professional dance or acting background before signing on, yet he was put through brutal daily rehearsals covering footwork, spins, and the moonwalk, often 10 to 12 hours a day, to the point where his feet became blistered and bloodied. Despite the physical strain and the risk of an injury derailing production, he reportedly refused to cut corners, knowing that longtime fans would notice any inaccuracy. That grueling process became a defining part of his preparation and a symbol of the standard he held himself to. To get the choreography right, the production brought in Rich and Tone Talladega, longtime choreographers who had actually worked with Michael Jackson on tour and in music videos. At first, the pair reportedly doubted whether anyone, even a family member, could truly replicate Michael's rhythm and instinct. Jaffer pushed through that skepticism with extra late-night practice sessions, eventually winning over the choreographers and validating that the film's dance sequences could hold up to intense scrutiny. Behind the camera, the production hit an early snag when acclaimed cinematographer Robert Richardson left the project due to scheduling conflicts tied to industry-wide labor disruptions. Losing a chief cinematographer so close to filming created a scramble, affecting lighting, lens choices, and overall visual planning. Producer Graham King and director Antoine Fuqua quickly brought in fellow Oscar-winning cinematographer Dion Beebe as a replacement, who had to jump in without the usual prep time to design lighting for massive concert scenes and quieter dramatic moments alike. Then came a bigger disruption, the historic SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes that shut down Hollywood productions industry-wide. Filming, originally planned for mid-2023, was pushed into an indefinite holding pattern. Cast and crew were left waiting for months, with Jaffa reportedly maintaining his physical training and vocal conditioning the entire time without knowing when shooting would resume. Principal photography finally began on January 22nd, 2024, a delay that would ripple through the rest of the production timeline. The most serious crisis arrived after filming had already wrapped. During post-production legal review, lawyers for the Jackson estate discovered a binding clause buried in a confidential 1993 settlement connected to accuser Jordan Chandler. That agreement barred any film or television production from depicting Chandler or dramatizing the specific allegations from that case. The problem: the entire third act of the original script, written by John Logan, was built around the fallout from those very allegations. Facing the threat of legal injunctions and lawsuits, the studio was forced to scrap the completed ending and rebuild it from the ground up, one of the more dramatic and expensive last-minute overhauls in recent Hollywood memory. Among the fully shot footage that had to be discarded was an elaborate sequence depicting the 1993 police raid on Neverland Ranch, complete with reconstructed sets and a scene showing Michael alone inside, reflecting on the public fallout. It was meant to be the emotional low point of the film. Because it directly touched on matters restricted by the settlement, the entire sequence had to be cut for good. With the original climax gone, Lionsgate launched an emergency reshoot in June 2025, giving cast and crew just 22 days to write stage and shoot a new third act. Screenwriter John Logan reworked the story to instead close on the triumphant 1988 Bad World Tour, requiring production to rebuild stadium sets, produce new period-accurate costumes, and coordinate international cast schedules on short notice. Early reports claimed the reshoot added a staggering $50 million to budget, but later reporting from Variety corrected that figure to somewhere between $10 million and $15 million. Notably, the Michael Jackson estate reportedly covered those additional costs directly, sparing Lionsgate from absorbing the full financial hit. Even so, the sudden overhaul created real financial strain and underscored how quickly legal complications can inflate the cost of a high-profile biopic.